Okay, I think I am going to get started. I am Nikki DiFilippo. Hi, Max. This is Nikki DiFilippo with Vera Group. And Max specifically mentioned that I should touch on the importance of marketing for startups. So I'm going to hone in on that in the middle of this conversation. But basically, I'm going to sum it up in one word, and that is viability. Marketing is core to the viability of a startup. And basically what I've seen is a lot of companies spend a lot of time on product development and they don't give enough time and attention to marketing. And in case you're not aware, you can always do a Google search and you can find out that the number one reason why companies fail is because they created a product that people don't want or need. So that is a function of marketing, which is why it's very critical to pay more attention to marketing. Today, what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of background about myself. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what marketing is, because I think a lot of people think different things when they think about marketing. I'm going to then talk a little bit more about why marketing is critical for startups, and then share with you some tips and considerations that I've learned throughout my career. First of all, my quick background. My undergrad is in marketing and business management from Kent State University. Soon after that, I went to work for A.T. Kearney as a market research associate and learned a lot about, well, databases back in the day where there really wasn't any. And I was lured away to a company called NACS Corp, which is the National Association of College Stores. And we were a wholly owned subsidiary of NACS, which is a trade association. And we distributed books and software to 3,300 college stores in the US and Canada. And my role as a software product manager was to grow the business from 2 product lines to, basically a lot more than that. And after a period of 5.5 years, managed to grow that business to about 50 million in sales, primarily through channel strategies. So that's definitely one of the key areas of marketing, which I'm going to touch upon later. After that career, I went to work for Charles Stack, working at Flashline, which was an enterprise software asset repository that managed software components for large corporations, and basically started at ground zero. Charlie had this idea originally to become the world's digital marketplace. And we started with the font store and then moved on to Apple components, and then we moved on to Java components. And then that business grew because that's where we had the traction. And then about 9 or so years later, the company was acquired by BEA, and then by today it's known as Oracle. Oracle bought BEA. So I was involved in the roller coaster there and learned about marketing and a lot of marketing online when that was all new. And after that, I have been on my own for 15 years, primarily working with software companies, primarily B2B software, and help them with marketing and business strategy, help them accelerate growth. And that's basically a little about my background. So I want to talk a little bit about what is marketing. When I talk to a lot of people about marketing, or what I learned from just having a number of conversations, is a lot of people think it's just about, sending out a clever email campaign or a Facebook ad campaign. It's really not about tactics. It's not launching a product line within a 4-week lead time that's been developed over the year. It's a bigger picture. It's more long-term focused than that. I spend 80% of my time on research and analysis. That's where all the work is in marketing. It really is. It's important. Spend a lot of time understanding who is the audience, how to make the product most unique, and how to spread the word. That kind of sums up kind of the 3 main areas. And what I'd like to do is also give you 2 definitions of marketing. One from Philip Kotler. He is a professor. I'm not sure if he's still a professor over at the Kellogg School at Northwestern. Anytime you take a marketing class, it was a book from him. So his definition of marketing is the study and management of exchange relationships. It is the business process of identifying, anticipating, and satisfying customer needs and wants. So that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I'd also like to share with you another definition from the American Marketing Association, which is, it is the activity, set of institutions and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. So what the heck does that all mean? I'm going to drill down into a couple of areas that and provide you with some detailed explanation. So basically, in the world of marketing, there's 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion. So product is, what is the product, for who, and why? That's the essence of what the product is. That involves messaging, value prop, and developing the brand. And before you can even do that, you have to start with customer discovery. You have to collect data, and you have to understand what's happening out there, both from a competitive perspective, environmental perspective, and everything else, in order to build the right product and create the right brand. A lot of that involves secondary research. I spent a ton of my time looking at competitors, trends. Where is money being invested? That's a good way to look too. Look at where are investors putting money? Where are they investing? Because that's always a good place to get a sense of whether or not that sector is going to be growing. And then I also spent a lot of time gathering data by doing a lot of primary research, which is a lot of the things that need to be done during the discovery phases. Once I collect all that information, I create messages that resonate and create value statements. So one thing to think about when creating value propositions, I wanted to share with you a couple areas you should consider when developing value propositions. You might have a value proposition around newness. Maybe your product is the first thing that's out there and people want to have something that's new and different. That is an opportunity for a value proposition. Another one is around performance or efficiency. If your product can significantly help the organization with performance and efficiency, that's also a very strong value proposition. Customization, if you can provide them a specific product for them, that's also a possible value proposition. Risk reduction is something else that could be considered a value proposition. Similarly, cost reduction, if you can help them reduce costs, that's always a good thing. And obviously, to be significant cost reduction, because if it's just minor, they may not pull the trigger. And usability, if something's easy to use, that is also very appealing. So basically, before creating any product, you want to gather some data. The second P of marketing is pricing, and this is one that I found goes often, I guess, underrated, but it's really critical. It's understanding what are customers going to pay and what do you need to charge to make a decent margin. You want to think about different pricing scenarios and then think through which ones you want to participate in. So for instance, price skimming is charging the most you could possibly pay. You may have a couple of clients or customers, but that's maybe something you want to do, and you might want to do that if you have a super high-end product and you're an early entry into the market with something very unique. Another pricing option is penetration, which is the opposite end. You're going to price super low just to get market share. Another pricing consideration is looking at your competitors. So what is the going rate for this type of product? That's another way to think about it. You could also think about using a freemium model, which is giving the product away for free by giving them basic features and then charging more for more features, similar to what LinkedIn does. You get the free version, but if you want to purchase or use features, then you could pay on a monthly basis and have access to more things. You can also price on a dynamic basis. So for instance, if you happen to have a vending machine in the middle of the desert and you're selling ice cold water, you can have it automatically change prices depending on what the temperature is. If you're driving there in the middle of the night and it's freezing because it's the desert, you might just sell it for $1. But if it's 120 degrees, you might want to sell it for $2. So that's a dynamic pricing. And then the other thing to think about is, are you pricing direct, or are you pricing? Are you thinking about pricing if you're going to bring in a middle person, or an Amazon or a distributor? And that is very important. So going back to the company that I used to work for, Nax Corp, I would sign on vendors so that we would sell software to college stores, and some of those folks came to me with a price. And typically, as a distributor, we would want to take on a 40% discount off of retail, so that when the college store sold it to the student or professor or whoever, the store could make a 20% margin. Well, some of those vendors who were new to the business came to me and they gave me a price. And so that's what we went with. And then, or actually, I take that back. They originally started selling direct. And so they gave people direct a 40% off price. And then when they came to us, that wasn't going to fly because we needed our margins as well. So that put that vendor in a tough situation. So I don't recall if we had to, if they had to go lower and break even, or what wound up happening. But that is definitely something to think about, is the extra layer of pricing. The third P of marketing is place. And while that's not the best word, what it really means is distribution. So are you going to go to direct? You can have a sales team. Are you going to go through a channel partner? Are you going to license your product? Are you going to go through a VAR, a value-added reseller? So basically, a company that incorporates your product in their product. So an example of that would be when you purchase a laptop, a lot of times you have Windows or something else pre-installed on there. That would be considered a VAR relationship. Or are you distributing it through a distributor? And then they would work with you on doing a lot of the marketing. So that's the third P of marketing. The fourth one is promotion, which really boils down to exposure. A lot of this is pretty straightforward. Trade shows, social media, PR, AdWords, content marketing, all of the above. The key here is evaluating cost per reach. I see too many startups spending a lot of time on social media. Not to say that that's not a good way to do things, but the other thing you definitely want to factor in is the time you're spending, and not just ROI, return on investment, but you want to think about ROE, return on effort. I see a lot of people spending too much time creating content that doesn't work, where they could be spending their time elsewhere. Now I'm going to talk to you about the importance of marketing for startups. Not that if viability wasn't enough, I'm going to share with you some other things to think about. First of all, before you even create a company, the first thing you want to do is customer discovery. That is definitely a marketing role. You want to find a problem and solve it. You don't want to create a product and then to go find a problem it solves and then try to sell it that way. So one thing that I can share, back in the day when I used to work for the software distributor, is a lot of products were sold on a PowerPoint. There was no product that was built. They just went out. A lot of these vendors went out. Their product was a PowerPoint slide, and they went and sold it. And then by the time the approval processes happened at companies, they had the opportunity to build it and to not waste any time building features that weren't needed. So that's how a lot of products were sold back in the day, was just using vaporware. So so the next thing I want to share with you about the importance of marketing for startups. Marketing is long-term focused. Sales is more short-term focused. So sales folks think about, how am I going to sell the next product over the 90 days? And marketing is a little bit more long-term. So if you think about it, I think about marketing as gardening, right? So you're starting with seeds and you have to nurture it along the way to get to the next step. So once you start, you have to You have to nurture it every day or every week or regularly just to make sure things are moving along. And once that's cut off, or as an example in the sales world, if there's a lead that's created and sales doesn't follow up with it, well, then it dies. So it's wasted effort. So you think about marketing as long-term and gardening. And along those lines, a sound marketing strategy leads to success, which is tying marketing activities to business goals. And typically you want to focus on narrow and deep when you're getting started. So when I used to work for Charles Stack, the goal was to build a digital marketplace, but we started with fonts. And I should say prior to that, he developed books.com, the same time that Amazon developed Amazon. And Amazon back in the day was only a bookstore. Many people may not know that, but they were selling books for several years, and then they eventually moved into other categories. So sound market strategy leads to success. You want to think long-term, and you want to go narrow and deep at the very beginning. Don't want to boil the ocean. It's also very important to collaborate with sales, product, and operations, so there is alignment. One more aspect of why marketing is important for startups: marketing helps sales become more efficient and paves the way. Salespeople can only make so many phone calls a day, send so many emails a day, and have so many meetings. What marketing does is help with the branding and help just make the doors easier to open when salespeople go out there. The other importance of marketing for startups: you don't have a company until someone pays for your product. Marketing does the research and analysis to understand the right model, which is backed by data, and marketing needs to create meaning, money, and margin. So in order to have somebody pay for your product, you need to do all that work up front to make sure you're going out with your best foot forward with a product that somebody wants. So I'm going to share with you a couple tips and considerations from the late Richard Osborne. He's the greatest entrepreneurial professor of all time. I'm not sure if Michael's on the call, but I've not had Michael as a professor. I'm sure he's excellent as well. But he basically said, as an entrepreneur, you never have enough time, money, or resources. What you have is creativity. And you need to think about that, because you really don't have time, money, or resources. You need to get very creative. So I'm going to give you an example. When I worked for Charles Stack, he decided he wanted to have an exhibit at Comdex, which was the predecessor to CES. And so basically he decided a few months before the conference that he wanted to go, and thought, oh great, I have got to compete with models wearing 3.5-inch discs on a runway. I remember Computer Associates had that, plus a bunch of people with PowerPoint presentations. So I started thinking, and a couple factors that I considered was, thinking outside of software components. I'm like, okay, what is hot right now? What is the new hot tech gadget? It was, at the time, a Motorola J2ME flip phone. So I searched on that, and then I found a book that was about to come out right before the conference. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to ask Jonathan Knudsen, who was an author, to see if he would be open to being in our booth. That way I could give away some of his books. They could meet the author. We would be viewed as leading edge. And basically the conversation turned out to be even better, because when I asked him, one of my criteria for getting some traction is the fun factor, right? So he mentioned that the fun tech gadget that was out was the Lego Mindstorms, and that all the software developers were crazy about this Lego Mindstorms. And since he was a developer and wrote this book and knew what we did, I said, I'm trying to connect the dots here. And he said, okay, what I'll do is I'll write an app that has software components, because Flashline was a software component repository, and that we would use the J2ME phone to control the robot to just get attention in the booth, which is what I wanted. And so it was a total hit. I wound up calling Lego, talked to the product manager there. That person wound up donating 10 boxes of Lego Mindstorms, which is not cheap. And he gave that to us, and we had a great outcome. It was on MSNBC, CNN, and it went great. And that didn't cost me anything other than the flight to have Jonathan come in to be in our booth. The other thing is strategy is overrated. Execution is everything. The key thing I want to say there is to make sure you coordinate with sales and operations, because everything needs to be working when you launch marketing. Otherwise, you could have the best strategy and the best plan out there, but if it falls flat on its face, it's not going to work. So that's basically what I have to say. I'm going to open it up for questions, and I'll look for some questions in the chat box. I know they're still coming through. Does social media marketing help B2B companies? Hi, Romana. Yes, well, it all depends on what you're selling and to who. So if you're selling a B2B product to, let's say, I don't know, retired people, maybe they're not on social media. I don't know. It's very important to understand where your market consumes. Where does your market go to get information? I mean, in general, I've found that it's becoming more and more effective by doing some targeting on Facebook, because B2B people do go to Facebook, and also LinkedIn. So I would say in general, yes, but it's going to depend on your product and your audience. The audience is key. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll share one of my personal tips, and that is to build your network. Because let's see, how much should a startup budget for marketing? Well, I've worked with a budget of 0 other than my costs, and that's where you get creative. And it could be 0 right up front. It could be just, it could be finding a few customers up front and having them basically pay for your development. And then as that grows, then you could add on to that. But I mean, I've worked with budgets starting at, I mean, some were 0. It was basically my cost and trying to get creative. And then, you know, 5, 10, 50, $100,000 over time. But, you know, you kind of work with what you have. I don't think there was a, you know, black and white answer. I would recommend finding a few customers right up front that will use your product so you have money coming in the door, and then you could use some of that for marketing down the road. But I mean, as you've seen with some of the things I had to do with Comdex, that was just getting creative, to Richard Osborne's point about never having enough time, money, or resources. Return on effort. Using your external rate for the calculation. Well, I think it depends on who's doing the actual work. So if you're having an intern work on it, or if you're the CEO working on it, those are a couple different rates. So yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who's doing the work, and then figuring that out. So obviously there's a couple different rates there, and if it's not as expensive to have an intern work on it, well, then maybe that might not be a bad way to go. But if it's taking you away from raising funds or finding new customers, I'm not sure that's the best use of the CEO's time. Creative other than getting early customers, 0 budget. Oh, well, okay. So I'll have to share with you one of the most effective ways of getting the word out there on a maybe 0 budget is PR. And if you do that right, I mean, obviously there's services out there where you can distribute press releases through, you know, paying PR Newswire or Business Wire to do that. But there's ways that you can get it out by posting to the right places. So writing a press release, I would recommend looking at some of the publications that where your audience read. And I would look at their newsletter. I would look at their LinkedIn profiles to see if there's opportunities for you to post it there. I would look at online trade shows to see if you can post press releases in their newsroom. But again, it's finding out where your customers are and how to get to them. But yeah, I would definitely say the first place I would start is PR, because all you're doing is writing a press release. Obviously, there needs to be some good content there, and then posting it on a website or wherever. Sending it out to people who have newsletters and have them include a link to the press release to get to your audience. So one tip about networking, because that's one thing a lot of startups don't have, is a big network when they're getting started. Well, not all, but some. I'd recommend getting involved with some nonprofit boards. And even though some of the folks, even though the nonprofit may have nothing to do with the business you're in, some of those folks that are on the board have a lot of connections. And you know, you're going into an environment where everybody's on the same mission to take, you know, to grow the nonprofit, and you get to make really, really good connections. And I would suggest just getting involved on a committee, getting to meet people on the board, and that's how to build a network. And a lot of those people that are at the board level probably have decent connections, and you could go to those folks to get introduced to other people once you get to know them. So that's how I've built my network. I've heard out there, you know, your network is your net worth. So I would definitely recommend getting involved with some nonprofit boards, and always focus on building your network. I want to say thank you all for joining this suggestions for CRM tools. Well, there's the free versions, which I believe MailChimp has a free CRM, and then there's Salesforce. But yeah, I would say I would look at MailChimp. There's also Sugar CRM. There's a few others out there. I think HubSpot has a free version, which is a little different. That's more marketing automation, but I would look at MailChimp and HubSpot to answer Ramana's questions. So, well, thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of the day, and enjoy this beautiful weekend. If you're living here in Cleveland, we finally have a cool down going on. And if any of you are interested, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to meet new people, and happy to answer any other questions. Have a good day.